Welcome everyone, good to see you all. And I want to welcome especially Jessica. Jessica is my special guest who is going to be leading this presentation this morning for us. So Jessica is going to be talking to us about sleep. So I do encourage you, if you have a paper and pen handy, you will want to take notes because I don't know about you guys, but I think sleep is something that many people struggle with. Whether you're having a hard time falling asleep, whether you have a hard time staying asleep all night, I think there's something we can definitely learn from Jessica. So Jessica Lemieux will guide us through an interactive workshop to help explain what is happening in our minds and bodies that gets in the way of a restful sleep. So Jessica, I want to welcome you, and I'm going to turn over the presentation to Jessica. She's going to lead us through a great presentation this morning. So thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction, Meg. Hey, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. So I'm a therapist, also located in Ottawa. I offer a lot of workshops in the community. I offer one-on-one therapy, and I'm also a full-time meditation teacher as a part of my therapeutic practice. So I have a real passion for talking about nervous system regulation. So we're going to be digging into this workshop, diving into how what's showing up in the mind-body system really does impact our sleep. So I'm going to need to share my presentation, Meg. So I'll probably need to be made a co-host to be able to do that. Are you able to do that?
Yep, you're all set, Jessica.
I'm set. You are already on it. Let's do it. Okay, then, without further ado, here is my workshop. You can see that, Meg? Perfect. Thanks so much for the heads up. All right. Okay, so welcome. All right, regulating the nervous system. Let's have a little look at what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to learn a little bit, if you aren't already aware, of the vagus nerve. So we're going to dig right into what the vagus nerve is and how that's connected to our fight, flight, freeze response, how that's connected to regulating the nervous system. We're going to talk about how there's this autonomic ladder that happens within the nervous system, and there's a hierarchy there, and that's really important to understand. So we'll dig into that. We're going to talk about some of the most common signs of activation. So meaning when the nervous system is dysregulated, it becomes activated. And so we're going to dig into what that looks like, especially during sleep, when we're trying to fall asleep. And then we're going to talk about the importance of rest and recovery. And then this is an interactive workshop. So I mentioned briefly at the beginning that I do teach meditation as a regular part of my practice. So it's mindfulness and it's meditation. So we're actually going to practice a few really basic exercises that can be done in 30 seconds to 5 minutes. So I really like to offer people things that are easily transferred even to the busiest of schedules, and you don't need to have had any experience with mindfulness at all. And then there may be time for a discussion at the end. I will keep a watchful eye here on the time as we move through here, because time can get away really quickly in this short period of time. All right, so do type your questions into the chat, and Meg can kind of monitor that, and we'll see what we've got time for at the end. So let's just dig right in here. I'm just going to adjust my view of all of you so I can read my slides. Awesome. So the autonomic nervous system, these are functions that happen within our body that are totally outside of our control. So these are happening automatically. So you may be familiar with the classic fight, flight, freeze response. We're going to dig in even deeper and talk about this in terms of the vagus nerve. And so we're going to be referring to the ventral vagal, the sympathetic, and the dorsal vagal instead of the classic fight, flight, freeze. But I'll cue you how these are similar or the same. So starting off here with the vagus nerve, I'm just like, love, love, love this particular image. This is the vagus nerve. So it runs from the base of your skull, and it has all these tiny little branches along the way, all the way down deep into the gut. And so each of these branches, you can probably tell a little bit here, that's the heart, the lungs, the back of the throat, going down further into the belly. And there's a whole bunch of branches in the face as well. And this matters. We're going to talk about this. We're actually going to do exercises that attend to these different places. So really what the vagus nerve does is it's this line of communication between the brain and the body. And it's this neurological function that's always sensing the world around us far before our brain even does. So this messaging to the brain, letting us know whether we're feeling stressed, whether we're feeling calm and relaxed, or whether we need to run, or whether we need to fight, whether we need to sleep, all of these things, this comes from the messaging from the vagus nerve. And so it's the regulator of our stress response in the body. And this is referred to as our vagal tone. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes here. But essentially, fight, flight, freeze. That's where those responses come from, all of these tiny little branches. We'll dig into some more information here, but just sort of keep that image in mind here of how complex it is. It's actually the largest cranial nerve in the whole body. It's quite complex and intricate, and researchers are still learning so much about it even to this day. So keep that in mind, and we'll refer back to this image a little later on when we start talking about how this impacts our sleep. All right, so I mentioned there's an autonomic ladder, and a ladder means that there is a hierarchy here in terms of how the body responds to stress. So this is a workshop about sleep, but this is also a workshop about stress in the body, because to be honest, the main reason why we struggle with sleep is because of activation in the body. So we've become dysregulated throughout our day for whatever reason, or it may be lingering, sort of stuck energy in the body. So let's talk about and really understand the nervous system so we can then dig into how this matters when it comes to sleeping. So look at this ladder on the side here. So at the top of the ladder, we're in the ventral vagal state. So that's the top of that vagus nerve. So remember how it started at the cranial level, so at the base of the skull. So the ventral vagal is when we're feeling safe. So when our body is sensing, I'm all right, things are okay, I'm feeling regulated, I'm able to be social, that's really when we're sort of at our best selves. You know, we can really tap into our creative center. We're able to tolerate stress as it comes in. Even if we do get sort of dysregulated, we're able to come back into a regulated state fairly quickly when our ventral vagal nerve is activated, okay? But then let's say an incoming stressor happens and we get bumped down. So literally it moves down in the body and down in this ladder of autonomic responses. So we always start in ventral, then when we get bumped out of it, incoming stressor, first place we go is to sympathetic, which you may also recognize as fight or flight. So sympathetic is about mobilizing, it's about moving. So the body's deciding, okay, there's a stressor. Now what do I do with it? Am I going to fight this stressor, or am I going to run away from it? So I'm sure you've experienced that feeling of wanting to run when things become overwhelming and stressful. That's the mobilization. We are designed at an evolutionary level to respond to stress in that way. It's very normal and natural. So it's a mobilizing energy that starts to buzz through the body, and the heart may start racing, and we'll talk a bit more about what that looks like. But this is really just to explain that there's an order. So then if the body still feels as though it's not able to resolve this stressor, it's not able to run away from it, it's not able to fight it, it bumps us down to the final line of defense, which is the shutdown. That's that real freeze response that you may have heard about before. So this is when the body feels like there's no other options whatsoever. And now it's sort of sensing that incoming stressor as life-threatening. So this can happen with everyday stressors. It doesn't actually have to be a life or death situation. This is just how we were designed biologically to respond to incoming stressors. So when we get down into this dorsal level, we really do feel kind of frozen and stuck. You might really feel it in your gut, that sort of sickening feeling. It can feel like procrastination, like we can't move. It can feel like depression. It can feel quite heavy. It can feel really isolating. So understanding how come our body is feeling that way, it's really helpful for us to know what we can do about it. So I briefly mentioned something about the tone of our vagus nerve. So if we have a weak vagal tone, that means we more easily get bumped out of that ventral state where we feel safe and social and regulated, and we can get stuck there. So we can get really stuck in that sympathetic, hyper aroused, buzzing energy. That can feel a lot like anxiety. That can be panic. There's a continuum here, right? It's important to understand it doesn't look the same for everyone, but at a base level, it is the same. And so a weak vagal tone happens when we've been exposed to stress chronically. So long-term stress, repeated stressors. And so over these last 18, 19 months, a lot of folks are feeling the impacts of chronic stress. Chronic worry, fear of the unknown, feelings of helplessness, powerlessness, those do take a toll on the body. And these things kind of get stored in the body. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But essentially what ends up happening is that vagus nerve and how it's a line of communication, it starts to get weakened. So it starts to slow down. There's some miscommunication. We can get stuck in a mobilized fight-flight mode or a shutdown freeze mode because of chronic stress. And when we have a strong vagal tone, we bounce back from that activation. So you can think of it as resiliency as well. So you get pushed into, let's say, fight flight, but you're able to pull yourself back into that regulated state fairly easily. So this workshop is really about strengthening vagal tone. So there are lots of things that we can do to actually strengthen that line of communication, which in turn is going to allow for us to have a much more restful sleep, which we're about to get into, okay? So just remembering that there's a hierarchy that happens, and it's important for us to start recognizing our signs when we've been pushed down that ladder and into a different state other than feeling regulated and safe. All right, so let's talk about sleep. How does this impact my sleep? So there's a little diagram here on the side that I love to use, which shows you that the body does store these different responses, these different energies in our bodies. So for example, at the bottom here, I have the flee or the flight response. So that actually is stored in the lower body, in the legs. If you think about it, if the body's preparing its energy to run away, from an evolutionary feature here. So we're originally preparing to run away from a predator, let's say. It's going to send the blood flow down into the legs. It's going to get ready. The hips are ready. The muscles are flexed. We're ready to go, right? And then the freeze response in the belly. So this is really interesting to me. So the diaphragm tends to constrict when we're under stress, and the breathing becomes more shallow, and it doesn't tend to really happen in the belly. It starts happening up in the chest. And so we've all felt like the nausea, the butterflies, the gut instincts, those are in the belly. And then moving on up, the fight response tends to be in the upper body. So again, think about it. If you were, planning to have to fight a predator, go right back to our primal level here. It's the best way to understand what's going on for us. The arms, the shoulders, the hands, the neck, the jaw. And so you might be starting to cue in here that there are times in your body where you're noticing activation in these places. I mean, who doesn't have, tense shoulders or a sore neck from time to time when they're feeling stressed out, right? These are really, really common responses. So this is starting to get us to talk about how okay, wow, this is really happening in my body. And the final here, that social engagement, that's the ventral state. That's the regulated state. And a lot of those little branches are up in the face area. So our smile, our eye contact, those are ways that we regulate the nervous system, and we communicate and we receive communication from others as well, which help us to feel safe and secure. So this is an introduction to where these different autonomic responses live in the body. And these bodily responses send messaging to the brain. In fact, 80% of the messaging that goes to the brain about what's happening for us in our everyday life comes from the body. Yet so much of the interventions that we've been taught are focusing on our mind only. We're trying to problem solve and think our way out of things and rationalize, why we're feeling the way, and minimize, and we kind of get stuck in our head. So this is a lot of the work that I do. I do body-based therapy because of that 80% of messaging coming from the body. We need to work with the body. And so it's important to recognize that what the body is doing is it's prioritizing resolving stress far over something like sleeping. So if you've ever been trying to sleep and maybe those legs are super restless, that's a really common one, or the belly's not feeling great, or you just have this buzzing energy moving through you, racing thoughts. We're going to talk more about what that looks like when we're trying to sleep. But no, the reason that's happening is the body's doing exactly what it was designed to do. If it's in an activated state, it's preparing to defend against an incoming stressor. It doesn't have to actually be life or death. That's just how the body takes it. We were designed in that way. So we're trying to sleep and the body's like, I'm not letting you sleep right now. There's an incoming threat. There's an incoming danger. We need to resolve this. And so I'm going to talk here now about what that looks like while we're trying to sleep. What is the body doing while we're trying to sleep, but yet it's activated? So you may recognize that this has happened to you before, because I'm pretty sure that all of us have experienced at least some, if not all of these at some point. So I'm lying in bed at night and I can't fall asleep, or I've awoken and I can't fall back to sleep. These are the most common ones. People can't get to sleep, or they wake up and they can't fall back asleep. And so here are the most common things that show up for people. So how do I know that I'm activated? How is it that I know maybe my body is in a dysregulated state? So here are some of the ways you may be able to tell. So those racing, ruminating, and looping thoughts are actually a sign of nervous system dysregulation. So it's the brain trying to resolve the incoming stress. But the funny thing about this is often the brain kind of gets stuck on something mundane, like your grocery list, or a conversation you had with somebody 10 years ago, or the lyrics to a song. So these are the things that people say, like, it's driving me crazy at night. And that's actually a sign of dysregulation. And most people tend to try to resist and get frustrated and try to stop the thoughts from happening with more thoughts. And that ends up being like this vicious cycle of like pouring gasoline onto a fire. So in the body, increased heart rate. I talked about that mobilization. The body's getting ready to, run or fight something. So we start to feel an increase in these bodily functions, like the heart rate, maybe sweating, maybe just an overall sense of restlessness, the tossing, the turning, the agitation. And then there can be a lot of feelings that show up too. So of course there's an emotional impact here when we are feeling stressed. So feelings of sadness, feelings of overwhelm, agitation. Shame is a huge one. Shame shows up for a lot of people because they can't seem to understand why. They're like, what's wrong? How come I can't sleep? How come I can't just get back to sleep or let this go? So people start to feel badly about themselves. And the shame, again, like I mentioned about the gasoline on the fire, oh my goodness, the body processes shame as such a dysregulation. It really does. It really starts to try to resolve that feeling of shame, and it ends up kind of being this loop. And Feelings of helplessness, that's also really hard on the nervous system. When the body is feeling like it's powerless or helpless, it really starts to stress out and panic. Again, coming back to the breath. So you may notice some changes and shifts in the breathing. So shallow breaths in the chest, or quick, short breaths, or difficulty. So some people feel like, oh, there's a weight on my chest and I just can't get a breath. Sign of dysregulation, oftentimes. And then the stomach is almost always involved. Nausea, churning, pit in stomach, butterflies in stomach. However it is that shows up for you, there are thousands of neurons in the belly. And so they're constantly sensing the world around us. So that's why it's always involved. And then the jaw, right? How many times have you woken up with like a sore, tight jaw, from clenching or grinding our teeth? Another sign of the body being activated. So this is all just the body doing exactly what it was designed to do. And that also may help with the frustration element here. That's actually one of my, most important points that I want to get across, is that there's nothing wrong with this. This is actually beautiful. The body is doing exactly what it needs to be doing. However, we can support the body to feel safe and regulated so that we don't need to feel this way, especially when it comes to sleep, considering how critical our sleep is to our wellness. All right, let's keeping on here. There we go. Okay, so rest and recovery. So I really did briefly mention this. So our bodies were absolutely designed to be able to go into a fight, flight, freeze mode, into a sympathetic, into a dorsal state, but they were not designed for long-term stress. We were designed for short bursts of stress, followed by a long period of rest and recovery. The body needs to recover after experiencing stress. So that's quite counterintuitive to the way that our culture works in general. There's a lot of pressure to sort of drive on and push through and minimizing what we're experiencing. We do this comparing, like, oh, my stress isn't as bad as my neighbor, or at least I don't have this going on for me. And so we kind of minimize our own struggle and we just keep pushing through. Also, the idea of rest and recovery, there comes like this shame and guilt with that too. We got these terms like lazy, or I should be doing something else. How come I'm just laying around? So it's interesting, all these loops that we can get into when it comes to our feelings about resting. But what I'm saying is that it's critical. The body needs to rest and to recover after experiencing stress, after being pushed into a sympathetic or a dorsal state. That's quite exhausting for the body. So we need to give it an opportunity to do this. And it needs help. So the body needs our help to process stress and to sense safety again in the world around us. Also, it needs an opportunity to discharge the stress. So I was showing you that image of how the stress physically does reside in the body. There's been tons of research done on this, that it's in our muscles, it's in our cells, right? It's in our core. And so there are things that we can do to actually release some of that stored energy and that stored stress. And this is my whole life's work here. This is what I'm dedicated to doing, is helping people find ways to rest, recover, and release. And I think it kind of makes sense that we can't move into a rest or recovery state when we're activated. When the fight, flight, freeze energy is buzzing through the body, kind of makes sense that we can't just go into a restful state. The body's got other priorities, right? So we're going to talk about how we can offer our bodies an opportunity to recharge after having been through challenging situations. Whatever is going on for you in your world, there's been nobody who's been free from stress in this last, 18, 19 months. And, it's interesting. People are like, oh, but things are, starting to, there's like a little hopefulness, but my body still feels exhausted. And I'm like, yeah, of course it does. This has been quite challenging on the mind body system. And so we still need to attend to ourselves. So let's start talking about that a little bit more here, get into the meat. All right, so we're going to talk about how do we do this? How do I regulate my nervous system? And so there are many, many, many ways. I teach these in my meditation classes and in my therapy and in my group work. But today we're going to focus a lot on breath, sound, and touch. And so what I want to talk about quickly, maybe this is very interesting to you too, is there's actual signs and indicators from the body when we've given it recovery, when we've given it an opportunity for release. So I want to share these with you first, and then we're going to do that interactive piece where we practice. All right. So, talked about the signs of activation. Let's talk about the signs of recovery. This is what we want. This is the good stuff, okay? So here are the most common signs that the body's been given an opportunity to release. Now, this one might be kind of surprising and interesting for you. So shaking, trembling, or twitching. So here's the thing. Our bodies, again, were designed to shake after experiencing stress. So we can just kind of look at animals for a moment here, right? Let's say a dog. A dog becomes frightened by something, like really frightened. What we may see right afterwards is a shaking, a trembling of their muscles. And so this actually isn't so much about the fear itself. This is actually about releasing that stored fear because their body became activated, their heart rate was going, and they were afraid, they were frightened, their safety was threatened. The shaking is to release that. So it's not even about the fear, it's we were designed to do that. So you may or may not have experienced this at one time or another after being afraid. Sometimes it happens if we're really, really cold. You know what's really interesting? That we come back to that shame again. People feel embarrassed when their body starts to shake and they try to stop it from doing that. But the body's doing what it was designed to do, which is release. So what's really interesting is that during some mindfulness or meditation practices, sometimes people get a little twitch or like a little tremble that goes through the body. That's a beautiful thing. So it's not to be alarmed. It's our body doing exactly what it was doing, and it's releasing and letting something that's kind of stuck in there. But we can also do intentional shaking, but we'll talk about that after. Slower, deep breaths. So you may actually notice the body kind of just takes a big breath in and out, creating an expansiveness, breaking up that constriction that kind of happens in the belly. The heart rate, we might notice it goes from beating quickly to beating a little bit more slowly. Tingling, we might start to feel a little buzz in the energy in the body, a little tingle in hands, feet, really anywhere. Laughing or giggling, that's a fun one. I teach meditation, like I've mentioned, and sometimes people will just start laughing in the middle of a class, and it's amazing because it's a great sign that the body is releasing something that's been in there. And people are like, I don't know what happened. I'm embarrassed. And I'm like, no, that's beautiful. Sighing, yawning, or feeling like you want to swallow. So if you can remember that diagram again of the vagus nerve, some of the branches are actually located at the back of the throat, and that ventral vagus nerve. So that's the regulated sensing safety. Those are the branches at the back of the throat and in the face. And so when we want to take a nice sigh or yawn or swallow, excellent sign that we've actually tapped in to that ventral state, so that regulated state. Great sign. Stomach, things might start breaking up in there. Might be like some gurgling and churning happening. And then also we could experience sort of waves of warm energy. So the body might just get like a nice wave of warmth moving through it. So if you're curious about any of the research that I've sort of been bringing forth here, I highly recommend looking into Dr. Elizabeth Stanley or Dr. Stephen Porges. So a lot of this is based on something called the polyvagal theory, all about the vagus nerve. And then this particular research from Dr. Elizabeth Stanley is incredible. It's all about the impact of mindfulness to regulate the nervous system. So I got to put a little plug in there because they're a couple of my mentors for sure. So good stuff. Let's do it. So back to our beautiful diagram here of that vagus nerve. I've added in sort of the branches and where they're located roughly in the body. Okay, this is not to scale, but it's to give you sort of an idea. So just start by looking here at that vagus nerve diagram. And remember, the ventral is the regulated state. That's when we're feeling safe and social and really at our best, really just feeling the most like ourselves. And so that's really in the upper portion here, back of the throat, the eyes, the face, the nose. We're going to talk about that. And then the sympathetic, that mobilization energy, that fight or flight, kind of in the center, but as I mentioned, yes, there's some activation in the legs as well. And then the dorsal, think like below belly button, like deep down in the belly, the dorsal branches down there with its little receptors, its little branches. So we're going to do a fulsome practice together, probably about 10 minutes. I'm going to make it like a little meditation for you, but it's 5 practices broken up that can be broken up. So I'm going to do them together so that you can feel a really nice, perhaps even a little release. So what we're going to do is I'm going to in a minute, I'm going to put a little calming music on and we're going to dig right in and do this, but I want to tell you what to expect. We're going to do some breathing with a sound. So ventral, we want to activate that ventral space by using our voice. So humming, singing, making a sound. You're actually connecting to the back of the throat and you're stimulating that vagus nerve, which helps to bring forth a sense of calm and regulation. We're going to practice something called an ujjayi breath. So if you've ever done a little bit of yoga, you may have heard this before. So it's not too complicated, and just try not to get hung up on doing it right or wrong. So what we do is close the mouth and we breathe in through the nose while creating a gentle pressure at the back of the throat. So just try to do that a few times. Makes a little sound like an ocean or a little bit like Darth Vader. Awesome. So we'll do a few of those because, again, we're creating a little pressure at the back of the throat. We're calming the body down. And so we're actually going to exhale out the mouth. So that's the next step. So we breathe in with the lips closed, creating the pressure, and we breathe out like we're fogging up a mirror. So it's like, really just trying to take the deepest breath in while creating the gentle pressure. Send that breath down as far as we can, and like you're fogging up a mirror with your exhale. Then we're going to use touch. So our hands are actually quite calming for the nervous system. So hands on our belly, hands on our heart, hands on our head, to connect to the 3 different spaces to send some calming messages through. We're just going to do a couple of grounding practices that I'll show you, just connecting to your sense of being supported. And then we're going to do a facial tension release in the eyes and the mouth. Before we dig into the practice, because I like to end with the practice, I just want to tell you that there's a few more things that you could do at home. So here's the thing. This is not about doing this all right before you go to bed. It's about doing these as often as you can. Breaking them up, they take about 5 to 3 minutes to do. So it's not about waiting until you're dysregulated to do these things. It's trying to incorporate them into your everyday life. So at-home practices that you can do, if you do happen to have a trusted person in your home or somebody that you can see and spend time with, co-regulation is one of the most incredible tools that we have accessible to us. So remember how I talked about the vagus nerve and the ventral branch being connected in the face? Making eye contact with a trusted person can help to calm and soothe the body down. Smiling at each other, so using our smiles to regulate the nervous system. And you can also align your breath. So sort of sitting across from one another, eye contact, and start to take a few deep breaths at the same pace. It's incredible how our nervous systems feel and sense one another. And if they're calm and regulated, then yours becomes calm and regulated, and you can help each other get into that state. Gargling, again, back of the throat, it really helps to stimulate the ventral branch. Cold water. So if you're super brave, go for a cold shower. It stimulates the vagus nerve. It's incredible. But if you're not very brave like me, splashing some cold water in the face also has a beautiful effect. And then dancing and intuitive movement and shaking. So remember I was saying how we can shake on our own. So really just allowing the energy to flow through the body. So just like shake out the wrists, shake out the arms, dance and move. You just even seated. It doesn't have to be this huge gesture. I do a lot of my practice just sitting in my chair, moving the arms, moving the hands, and really trying not to get too much in the head and just say, what does my body want to do right now? Put on your favorite song and let the energy to kind of flow through the body to get it unstuck. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to move into this little practice here. So for a minute, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and we'll come back to it in 10 minutes. I'm just going to put some music on. So what I want for you all to do is just find a comfortable posture. This will be a closed eye practice for those of you who feel comfortable with that, or just find something to just gaze upon gently. And we'll go through this 10-minute practice of moving through those different exercises that can be broken up. You don't have to do them in this perfect order. I'll let you know we're moving into this exercise and that exercise. All right? Okay. I'm excited to share this particular process with you all. All right. So find a posture that your back feels supported, you feel comfortable, you feel grounded. So if you can reach your feet onto the ground, I encourage you to do that. Sort of press the feet down into the ground. Even before you close your eyes, just start to sense that I'm supported right now by this chair, by whatever I'm sitting on. I can feel the weight of my legs. I can feel the muscles in my body holding me in place right now. By doing this, we're starting to bring groundedness into the body, which is what it craves above all else, a sense of safety. And we do this by letting it know it's supported. So when you're ready, I invite you to just gently close the eyes down, and we're going to move through a series of practices to help regulate, to help calm, to help ground, to help release. So as you close the eyes, just take note of what's here for you right now. So right away there may be thoughts, judgments that are showing up, maybe a little skeptical, maybe a little nervous. And so mindfulness and meditation are not about quieting those thoughts. They're about noticing them with gentleness. So the eyes close and we become aware of our inner world. So what's there for you right now? Mind, in your body, and in your emotions. Just take a scan. It's really about noticing what's here and making space for it, not resisting, because remember, the body's always communicating with us, and we're taking an opportunity to listen. And we just gently go, okay, I'm thinking about A, B, and C. Okay, in my body, I'm feeling tense, I'm feeling stressed, or I'm feeling great. In my belly, in my legs, let's just name what's here. This is very grounding because the body feels heard and noticed. And then what's here for you at emotional level? What's your mood like right now? And go ahead and just name it. Again, that's really calming. Wonderful. So let's start with the breath. So first, just notice that you're already breathing. So for a moment, follow the flow of the breath as it moves through your nostrils, and maybe it stops in the chest. Maybe it goes all the way down in the belly. Just noticing simply, I am breathing. Interesting how our bodies don't need anything from us to do this. Just for a few breaths, notice the breath as it is. And we're going to jump into that breath with a sound. So there's no right or wrong, there's no special sound. It's going to be like this. A deep breath in through the nose, sending the breath as far down into the belly as you can. And the exhale, just a sound like a hum. the entire exhale. Think about creating a vibration in the mouth and at the back of the throat. Take a pause. This may take some getting used to. Let's do 3 more at your own pace. Don't worry about keeping up with me. When you're ready, a big breath in through the nose. Really feel the air moving down into the belly. And then an exhale, lips closed, vibration in the mouth, back of throat. You're stimulating that ventral branch, which brings regulation in. Beautiful. Let's do 2 more at your own pace. In. And any sound. Maybe you feel a softening. Maybe you notice the shoulders kind of drop down in response. The facial muscles respond. And go ahead and do 1 more at your own pace. Beautiful breaths. I promise you, you are doing great. Now, after this last round of sound breath, go ahead and just find your easy breath again, that flow that's moving through you. For a moment, connect to the sensations of your breath. So I feel it moving through my nostrils, down my throat. Maybe I can even hear the sound of my own breath. All of these are grounding. Now let's try that Ujjayi breath. So it's a breath in through the nose with the lips closed. As we create a gentle pressure at the back of the throat, it makes an ocean-like sound. And then when we exhale, we make a sound like we're fogging up a mirror. So let's just try a few of those till it gets comfortable. So breathing in through the nose, lips closed, pressure at back of throat. As deep as you can, and then extend that exhale as long as you can. Take a pause, don't rush this, and let's try a few more at your own rhythm. Pause. Again, in through the nose, pressure at back of throat, gentle ocean-like sound. Then you're fogging up a mirror. It's okay to smile, it's okay to have fun with this. 1 more. Awesome. Now let's relax that breath, go back to the easy breath, and let's try a couple hands-on practices here. So let's just bring 1 or 2 of our palms and just place them on the belly. And just for a moment, just visualize how your hands do have this ability to connect to our calming nervous system. They do. So just visualize your hands having this calming energy. And remember that freeze response living here. We're just sending some nurturing, calming energy just by placing our hands here. Just feel the warmth of your touch. This is so soothing to the nervous system. It feels comforted by this. And then let's try the same with the heart. So 1 or 2 hands on the chest. And again, it's really just about feeling your own touch. So the warmth, think about the fingers, the palm. There's no right or wrong. Just visualize we're sort of calming the heart space. We're calming that fight energy, that energy that's buzzing. And then finally, we can take 1 or 2 hands and place them on the head and just gently hold the head. This is a really compassionate hold. Visualize it sort of calming the thoughts, those ruminating thoughts. And you can also send some sweet messages like, it's okay. I can sense I'm activated and that's all right. You know, we start talking to our bodies and it's actually quite incredible what happens. It's okay if this is really uncomfortable and foreign. That's totally natural. Let's relax the hands down. And place hands on the legs now. The thighs, think about that flight energy. You can even gently rub the legs a little, or it can be still. And again, just connecting to that buzzing, mobilization energy that lives in this space. And we're just visualizing how our hands, incredibly, do send a calming energy. So just sort of receiving that. Beautiful. You can relax your hands in any way you like now. And I just want to move now into the facial tension release. So remember how the eyes and the mouth and the jaw, the smile are connected to the ventral branch. So connect to the eyes now. And I want us to just squeeze them tightly closed. So like really just scrunch up the eyes and hold them. Just tight, 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 squeeze. No pain or anything, but just squeeze them closed. A lot of tension is actually stuck here. And then go ahead and soften the eyes completely. So really feel how the muscles relax and let go. Really just encourage a softening through the forehead, the temples, the eyes. Now come to the jaw. And even if you're a tactile person, you could bring your hands onto the jaw if you like, and just hold, or just simply notice the jaw. And let's see if we can drop our tongue down to the bottom of the mouth. This releases stored tension, that tightness in our jaw. And even just thinking about softening the jaw has this incredible power. So I release and let go of all tension in the space in my mouth and in my jaw. Soften and let it go. And the final thing we do is bring the most gentle smile to our face that we can, and we hold it. When we smile, we send calming and regulating hormones through the entire nervous system. So it may feel a bit silly to smile to yourself, but give it a try and just hold a little smile. And visualize these calming hormones just moving through the body. Wonderful. All right, release the face. Let's come back into the body. So start again to feel your feet on the ground, the backs of your legs supporting you. Feel your hip bones, your sit bones, and start to bring movement into the body. So maybe just a little stretch. Maybe you want to roll the shoulders or wiggle the fingers. We're just bringing awareness back into present moment. Wonderful. And when you're ready, come on back, opening the eyes, but having a look around the room. This is really grounding. So just notice what you see, name a few things in your mind. Okay, body, here we are. We're back at home in this room. Wonderful. Thanks everybody for giving that a try. Really quickly finish off this workshop and we'll have just about 10 minutes here. So I hope that was a helpful little breakdown, and it's great you're going to receive a recording so you can go through these again. So if anyone's interested in digging deeper into this kind of work, I do have about 50 different online meditations. They're audios, and a bunch of them are specific to restorative sleep. So I've created one in specific that's a 45-minute practice that's designed specifically to dig way deeper than we just did into deactivating the fight, flight, freeze response. So we actually attend to the upper body, the middle, the lower, and the upper. And there's a little bit of movement. And remember how I was talking about discharging that stress? So we do a few little exercises of sort of shaking it out and squeezing and releasing and so on and so forth. So anyone who's interested in digging deeper, you can find me online. I've got a website, cultivationtherapyservices.ca, or email me at gmail.com. And there's a subscription that you can get for my monthly meditations. Like I said, it's about 50 different ones that you can listen to 24/7. And that is it. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm coming back to all of you, see what we've got going on in the chat. All right. Made it.
Thank you, Jessica. Wow, that was incredible. I really appreciated just both sides that you showed, really diving a little bit deeper into some of the reasons that we're experiencing stress. A lot of that I did not know before. So I hope those who are attending also enjoyed a little bit more of the behind the scenes, the reason we have trouble sleeping. And then also to try it out in practice was awesome. I don't know about anyone else, but I was yawning quite a bit. and now knowing that like, oh, this is a good thing, this is why, is really helpful. So I think, this is really great.